This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM, The Wizard. We have with us at Wizard today Jacqueline Saper. She's the author of the book From Miniskirt to Hijab, and we're very glad to have you here with us today, Jacqueline. How are you today?
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Pleasure to be with you.
Well, we met at the WTTW Chicago Tonight meet and greet, and you told me that you recently wrote your book From Miniskirt to Hijab, and you wanted to discuss it with us. But first of all, you are an alumna of Northeastern Illinois University.
Yes, I
Could
am.
you tell us about your education here at Northeastern Illinois University?
Well, Northeastern Illinois University has a special place in my heart and in my life. It was the first university I attended in America. I graduated in December of 1994. It's been some time.
And what was your major?
College of Bachelor of Science in Business, concentrating in accounting, and I graduated summa cum laude.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's very hard.
Yeah, I received 2 awards while I was here, which was very meaningful.
What kind of awards?
It was called Alfred B. Robinson Award, and another one was a award in excellence, in College of Excellence Award. It was very meaningful. We had a reception downtown. I got a medal. I still have it.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. What was the first award awarding you? What was it? What did you do to deserve that award?
Just high grades.
Oh,
My perseverance, good grades, and the potential of what I could be.
Of course.
I continued. I took a CPA. I became a CPA from the Board of Advisors of Illinois University. I became a CPA, and I practiced as a certified public accountant for years.
When you were a student and you earned such high grades, were you able to do extracurricular activities? Did you have time for that?
Well, at the time, I was a mother and of 2 young children. And that's why Northeastern is so special to me, because I came back to school when I was 29 years old. My education had been stopped from high school until I could attend university in America. Because
And Northeastern was your first university in America?
well, I went to Oakton Community College.
I see.
I got a liberal arts degree there. Then I transferred here. And it worked very well because, as I said, I was a mother of 2 young kids, and I could juggle all the responsibilities I had. And I was working I was a preschool teacher at the time as well, so I had a part-time job.
So were you a full-time student?
I was a full-time student,
Well,
yes.
Congratulations for earning such high grades with all that
Thank
other
you.
stuff on your plate.
Thank you.
Please describe your upbringing in Iran.
Yes, well, actually, I'm an Iranian American. I immigrated to the United States in 1987. My upbringing in Iran, I grew up there in the 60s and 70s. It was an idyllic time when it was during the time when Iran had a Shah. Shah means king, the monarch. It was a Western, pro-Western, secular monarchy. It wasn't that much difference than growing up in America. You know, I wore miniskirts. I attended a co-ed school. I traveled to Europe. I had a privileged upbringing, and it was a very nice time.
Do you know what the life was for those that were less privileged than you? Did you have any idea at that
Actually,
time?
I did, because my father was a university professor, and as you know, well, you may not, my father's Iranian. I was born in Iran. I grew up there, but my mother is British, and she was a career woman.
A career in what?
My mom worked as the assistant to the airport manager at Mehrabad International Airport in Tehran. She had a high position, and this is the time and era where the majority of Iranian women were competent homemakers, and they stayed home. But my mom was a career woman, so we had live-in maids, home helpers, and they came from the underclass, devout Muslim population group. And I was an insightful child. They became my second mothers. And because they knew everything about the culture. They were my Iranian mothers. They gave me something that my own mom could not. And I was very close to them. And through them, I understood the hardships of what we call the underclass, who eventually they did an uprising and the revolution occurred.
So did you learn about what the Iranian Revolution meant through them? Is that your first knowledge of the Iranian Revolution?
Possible, I lived it. I went through the revolution, but having that exposure with the home helps helped me a lot, because I grew up Jewish, in a Jewish family, in a society where 98 or more % of the population are Muslim. So through them, I learned the Islamic, salutations, protocol, which came very much handy after the revolution.
You mentioned on your website that your favorite book was Tale of Two Cities. So what kind of violence did you encounter during the Iranian Revolution that was comparable to what was happening in France during the setting of the Tale of Two Cities?
Well, very much, a lot of similarities. In Tale of Two Cities, there was a king who was overthrown by the uprising of the masses. This happened in Iran. It was at Tehran that I grew up, the capital city. It became two cities, the one before the revolution and the one after, completely with different ideology, different mindset, different regimes, very, very different.
What about the privileged and the rich during the revolution? Were they in danger? What was their life like?
Very much so. The educated elite, who more or less were aligned with the Shah, the prior government, they were arrested. Many of them escaped the country. The latter part of 1978 and 1979, when the revolution was happening, was the time of chaos, and a lot of people who were escaping the country. They left property behind.
What about your father and your family?
We stayed. So we were not any key players in the prior regime, but there's a reason we stayed. Everybody couldn't just pick up and drop everything and go. You needed visas to go to another country. So we stayed, and I stayed for 8 years after the revolution.
So you saw the entire revolution,
Absolutely.
basically.
I was there. It was about 8-9 months of chaos. Then when the new regime, Islamic Republic of Iran, was founded, I stayed there until 1987. So for 8 years longer. And this is the first decade, those years were the most fundamental, volatile time of the revolution, because a new regime was establishing itself. There were a lot of executions of prior regime, people who were associated with prior regime or opponents of the new regime. And there was a Iraq-Iran war happening at that time.
And there was also the Iranian hostage crisis.
Absolutely. And I was in the street when this happened, by chance. I was shopping in some boutiques nearby, and I heard the riots and the demonstrations, and I thought to myself,
what were the riots like in Iran versus over here? Were there fires, looting? What was it like?
Well, during the revolution, there were burnings of tires, shootings, tanks in the streets, but the revolution succeeded in February of 1979. The Iran hostage crisis happened in November 1979. So I was confused. Obviously, there were no shootings and tanks, but there were, slogans shouting of "Death to America," and and I was thinking, what's happening now? What's going on now? And obviously, they were going up the gates of the American embassy, and they went inside.
How did the Iranian Revolution affect you?
Very much so. It changed the direction and the course of my life. If Iranian Revolution had not happened, I would be still in Iran. I would have had a completely different life. The Iranian Revolution stopped my education. I could not get an education in Iran.
You said that you only had were educated up to high school, so that was
Yes.
high school in Iran.
Right. Well, high school. What was high school in Iran? Was that your question?
That's your highest level of education
Yes.
before you came to the
Yes,
university.
I graduated the year of the revolution, 1979. I graduated from high school, and it was expected for me to go to university. But what happened in Iran after the revolution, in 1980, the all higher education institutions were closed down.
Why? Because they were too Western?
Yes, exactly. It was called the Cultural Revolution, and for 3 years there was no opportunity to go to school. And when they reopened, it was a lot of curriculum was omitted. Any Western ideals were taken out, and then getting into university, no matter what field of study I wanted to do, I had to take a theology exam in Shiite Islam, and you had to have a recommendation letter from the nearby mosque's cleric. And, it became more or less I was an outcast, and I could not go because I was a religious minority.
Please describe how, if any, discrimination that you experienced as a, how do you pronounce this?
Dorage,
Dorage,
yes.
binational, which made up 0.29% of the population of 35 million at the time. What was it like being a Dorage?
Yeah. Well, let me make some clarifications. The Jewish minority in Iran have lived in Iran, have existed there for 2,500 years, a millennia before Islam came there. So they've been there for a long time. But at the time of the revolution, Iran's population was 35 million, and the Jewish community was around 100,000, which is 1/3 of 1%.
Right.
But there were visible, vibrant members of the community, and I experienced no discrimination. Now, within this very small community, my family was one of a kind and very unique because it was bicultural. My mom was Western European, my father Iranian. And there were literally no other Iranian Jewish families who had a foreign parent. So anyone who in Iran who has one parent from different nationalities or races, they're called dorage. And rag in Persian means a vein, as if they have two kinds of veins. So my experiences was a little different because I was the only, more that I know of, Jewish girl who was bicultural. It was a positive experience. I was always admired for my looks. My father and our family was respected. And I grew up with more insights because having English relatives, I realized I wasn't like my British cousins or like my Iranian cousins. And because I traveled every year to England, I could shift myself to become who they wanted me to be. Among Iranians, I'm 100% Iranian. When I went to England, I was just like them. And I understood the differences in culture, how to behave, how to speak, because it's a very different culture from each other. Yes.
This is the Wizard, WZRD Chicago, 88.3 FM. So, Jacqueline, you weren't bullied then at all?
Well, bullying it's natural. I think more or less I won't say bullying, but at that time era, it was very important to be popular among the popular kids. Fashion was important, but to say bullying, no, I don't think so.
Do you have any idea about how the Dorage are currently treated by others in Iran and the percentage of the population today?
Well, Iran, more or less, it's a country of many different diverse ethnicities. There are the Kurds, the Turks, the Lurs, the Persians, some Arabs, but it's more or less homogeneous because they're all natives of the land. But to have foreigners living in Iran nowadays is not that common. Mm-hmm. So everybody's Iranian.
So if non-Iranians cannot live in the country comfortably? Do they
No,
get
they
discriminated?
can. They
Oh,
can.
they just don't want to?
Iranians, by culture, are very hospitable. They love guests. It's a beautiful, rich culture, and they're very nice people. But obviously, with current relations going on, I would not recommend an American family to go and live there.
I see.
It's not easy.
Mhm.
Although the people are very nice, but with the governments, so
There's
yeah.
no privacy to be a regular family, is what you're saying.
It depends who you are, but there are a lot of Indian families, doctors who live in Iran. But to say to go and live there, there's not a community for them. Before the revolution, the expats had clubs, television programs, restaurants. Nowadays, that's not going to be that easy.
So the popular culture presently in Iran is similar to post-Iranian revolution?
Yes, it's Islamic Republic. It's in Iran. Iran was called Iran until 1979. After the revolution, it's officially called Islamic Republic of Iran. And after the revolution, there is no separation between religion and state. So everything is according to religion, how you behave, how the laws are. So it's a little different.
Iranians can't access Western music or television then?
Well, the television and media there is state-run, but obviously through internet, through apps, they are exposed to what's going on outside.
So the Iranian government doesn't block that programming from the internet?
They do block some of them. Internet is it's monitored. It's slow. I can tell you it's slow. When there have been protests, some apps were stopped. But people are smart. They go around it.
They find a way.
They find a way, and Iran's population now is 82 million. So I can say 2/3 or 70% or more are a very young population, maybe 35 and under, and they yearn for more freedoms, and they're attuned to what's going on in the other parts of the world, again, through social media.
How hard was it for you to get a visa to come to the U.S.? And are you a permanent resident of the U.S.?
I'm a citizen.
Citizen?
Yes, yeah, I'm a citizen.
Do you have dual citizenship then?
I do, but I don't plan to go back to Iran because of a few, in Iran, Zionism is forbidden. You cannot be pro-Israel. But I have traveled there, so that.
What about pre-Iranian revolution? Zionism was accepted?
Before the revolution, actually, Iran had acknowledged Israel. They had amicable relationship, and there were direct flights from Tel Aviv to Tehran every day. So it was, and United States obviously was one of the best, most closest allies of Iran, and U.S. were very close.
So did you experience any kind of repression during the Iranian revolution?
Well,
except for being careful?
Repression, well, as a Jew, in general, as a religious minority, I was concerned because of the animosity of the new regime towards Israel. We were afraid that we would be associated with that. However, Imam Khomeini, who was the Ayatollah Khomeini, who was the leader of the revolution, he declared that Christians and Jews, who are the people of the book, that means that they are monotheistic faith who preceded Islam, they are accepted as citizens of Iran, and they were not to be mistreated. So we could practice our faith. However, obviously, any association with Israel was a crime. But unfortunately, there is another faith in Iran called the Baha'is. There is a Baha'i temple in Wilmette here. And since the revolution, their members have been persecuted very much so.
Just a very brief description of how Baha'i faith differs from Islam.
Baha'i faith differs in the way that their leader, their prophet Baha'u'llah, he appeared appeared only about 200 years ago or so.
I see.
It's a very new religion.
Mhm.
And in Islam, there is a belief that Prophet Muhammad
I
is
see.
the last messenger of God. So any other messenger is not to be accepted.
I see. What are some American misconceptions about Iran?
As I mentioned, Iran has a very rich culture. It's an ancient country of over 2,500 years. Once upon a time, it was the Persian Empire. Iran's name was Persia until 1935, and then it was changed to Iran.
And why was it? Why
It was
did it
always
change?
known as Iran in the country by the people. It was Iran.
What does Iran mean?
Well, Iran, they originally come from they were from nomads who were called Aryans,
I see.
and they lived in the Caucasus area, and they're their descendants. So they were always called Iran, but in Iran, it used to have, in the olden times, there were a lot of wars with the Greek, and I think then when one of the kings of Iran, Cyrus the Great, came from the province of Pars. And for the Greeks, Pars is called Persia,
Mhm.
and that province became the dominant area of the country, so it was just referred to as Persia.
Aryan, is that the, how do you spell Aryan? It's not spelled Aryan.
It's not, don't confuse it with the Nazis and their philosophy, but it was a people,
I
and
see.
they're from that area.
So it is the same people, but it's not the same philosophy.
No,
I
no,
understand that.
Yes, but and the misconceptions about Iran, as I mentioned, it's absolutely a beautiful country, 4 seasons. It's a very large country. I believe it's the 18th largest country in the world. It has the Caspian Sea to the north, and the Persian Gulf. Obviously, we hear it in the news to the south. The people by culture are nice people. It's the government that we hear about, and we see people on the news. We see protests, death to America, and all that. That's a small sliver of the country, people. I mean, and it has a beautiful, delicious cuisine, and a lot of nice things about the culture. And they speak Persian. Iranians speak, the language is Persian, or known as Farsi in Iran, and unlike the people, the dominant majority in the Middle East, Iranians are Persian ethnicity. They are not Arabs, like the other countries, and obviously they don't speak Arabic. The religious stricture is in the Arabic language, but the majority of Iranians don't speak Arabic. They don't know it.
But they do believe in Islam.
Correct.
But they do not speak Arabic.
Correct.
Are there any other countries in the Middle East that are like that?
Yes, in the Middle East, well, Turkey is an example.
I see.
Turkey, well, half of Turkey is in Asia. They speak Turkic. They're of Turkic ethnicity. In the Middle East, I could say about 60% are Arabs, like Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon. But 40% are not non-Arabs, like Iranians, Turks. The Kurds. The Kurds don't have a country, but there are 30 million Kurds who speak Kurdish, and obviously Israel, which is in the Middle East.
Okay. So why did you become a writer and a journalist?
Well, actually, by training, I'm an accountant, but in 2009, my whole career path changed because there was an uprising in Iran. There was a rigged election going on, and people were very upset because they believed that their votes had not been counted, and the President Ahmadinejad was elected for a second term, and a lot of people were dissatisfied with that. So there was an uprising, people poured in the streets, and there were some chaotic moments there, and I was just working, minding my own business, and I got a call from a law firm. They were desperate for Persian translators. There were an influx of refugees and asylum seekers because they were going to be arrested in Iran. So I fell into a whole different career path, and I loved it. I became a translator. I worked with asylum seekers, and
Asylum seekers in the U.S., right?
correct. And since then, I have been a volunteer at National Immigrant Justice Center. I volunteer and give my time. I translate, I work with supervising attorneys.
You still do this?
I still do that. I'm working on a case right now. Then there is a movie called Alex and Ali. It's a documentary thriller. I worked with the producers, Left Brain, Right Brain Productions. There was 80 hours of recordings that I translated, and I subtitled the whole movie. And then people were so interested in my unique background. I had so much to offer, so I became a public speaker. I kept on speaking, gave lectures, and then people asked me, then why don't you write about your book? And I realized that I have an obligation to tell the world what happened in Iran. Because for others, the Iranian Revolution is just a footnote in history, something that has no physical or psychological significance for them. But for me, it changed my life, and I have an obligation to tell this story.
Did you have any trouble getting a visa, and your family getting a visa to come to the U.S.?
Absolutely, I did. After the revolution, unfortunately, there was discrimination. Although we were recognized as a religious minority, but we were still second-class citizens. And for me, more so, because not only I was a religious minority, I was also a woman. And women in Iran, more or less, I could say, they've been discriminated because the laws changed. The laws like child custody, divorce, is all in favor of men, and women are...
And it wasn't like this pre-revolution?
No, absolutely not. Most important was the mandatory veiling of women after the revolution. All women are compelled to wear the hijab. I wore it for 8 years, regardless that I was not a Muslim woman. And today in Iran, women are at the forefront of the opposition, because many don't want to wear the hijab. And for example, there's a big news in the Western media. In Iran, women are not allowed to go to sports stadiums, and many other things. So for me, as a woman and as a religious minority woman, life was restricted. And there was a time, it wasn't a law, but it wasn't written anywhere, but they would make it very difficult for Jews to leave the country. They would not give me a passport.
Why was that? They wanted to keep you there for what? Or they just wanted others who wanted to leave to give them priority? Why?
I don't know. Discrimination. They wanted maybe money, but many did. It wasn't the question of money for me. They would not give me a passport, or they would allow the husband to. I was married in Iran. I had my 2 children in Iran. They would let's say they would allow the husband to leave, but the wife had to stay behind, or they would.
Is that what happened in your case?
You have to read the book.
Okay.
People ask me, how did you get out of Iran? During those times, many people left illegally by land, by human smugglers, by the desert, which was very, very dangerous. We did not want to do that.
Of course.
So, can I show my book?
Sure.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
This is my book. It's the publisher is Potomac Books of the University of Nebraska Press.
Okay, so it wasn't self-published. So
No,
yes.
it was not self-published, and I'm very proud of this publisher.
Is this your first book?
It's my first book. Actually, I'm working on my second book now. And the publisher is the largest publisher of university presses between Chicago and Los Angeles. It's been in business for 75 years. So it's absolutely an honor to be published by them.
Did they approach you with the proposal, or did you write the manuscript and send it to them?
Actually, I had finished the manuscript, and I thought of, the route is to find an agent. So I sent my manuscript to some agents, and it's so difficult to find an agent. And I thought to myself, let me try a different route. It is a non-fiction. It's history, but in a personal story. So I approached them, and
In person, or did you just send it to them?
I sent it to the acquiring editor. He was interested, but he said it went through a rigorous review. they had about, I think in total 13 reviewers look at it before they accepted it. And then they hired, who I don't know who it was, a scholar on Iranian studies to read the manuscript to validate that all the dates and events and the location of places is correct. And the print...
Did he find any mistakes?
No, because I was absolutely truthful. And the publication, it's a slow process. It took almost 2 years to publish, but because there's so many departments. But I'm very happy I waited and went the right way. The cover, I was concerned because I didn't know what kind of cover they would choose.
It's a beautiful cover.
They chose a picture of me at the age of 17. So, and I have actually the blurbs at the back. One blurb is from Dr. Matteo Mohammad Farzaneh, who is the associate professor of history at this university. And he was very kind enough to, he's Iranian American, he was very kind enough to read the manuscript and give me a blurb.
Was he one of the 13 reviewers or no?
No, the reviewers were from the
enough.
university of the publishers themselves.
I see.
He was the blurb who provided the blurb at the back of the book. Yes.
So you had no other relationship with that professor?
No. I was here a long time ago. Yes. And my major was not history. But now I think I've become a historian. I'm very much interested in I lecture on at Oakton Community College as an Iran subject matter expert. I give and with the news today, Iran is always in the news. That's why my book is so timely.
Right. Are Iranians represented in the American press? In other words, are there many Iranians who are reporters for the American press that you know of?
Some are, yes. Well, first let me say that Iranian Americans in the United States are one of the most successful immigrant group in the country. They are highly educated and or very well-known businessmen.
Are they usually educated in the West, and if so, in what countries?
Here, mostly in America. They've been educated in the United States. And as for women reporters, there are some, especially now that 40 years after the revolution, mainly the second generation Iranian Americans. But the majority of my age group are successful businessmen, doctors, scientists, university professors.
You know what businesses thrive in Iran?
Today?
Yes. Is there a thriving business community in Iran? Are there many people that go to Iran to do business? Because we have a College of Business and Management here at Northeastern Illinois University, and I'm sure that the students are very curious about the business climate in Iran.
Well, unfortunately, with the current sanctions, the economy is suffering, very much so. But I guess it depends what you're looking for. There may be a very good real estate market. There, in regards to technology, I know there is an equivalent of Amazon in Iran, which is doing very well.
What is it called?
I don't know actually.
That's okay.
It has a Persian name. I just forgot.
That's okay. Our listeners
it's
could look
doing
it up.
very well. And remember, it's 82 million people there.
Right.
So it's a very untapped market.
How interested are Iranians in Western culture and goods? It's hard for them to access it, but do they crave it?
Well, actually, I think they do, because the majority of Iranians are young, and it's a land of contradictions. The leaders are elderly, majority clerics who've been there forever. The same, more or less, a lot of the faces are the faces of the people, they're founding revolutionaries. But you hear chants of death to America and all this animosity, but the average Iranian